Hi, I'm John Keahey. I write travel narratives of Italy and Sicily, and I've been asked to read a bit from my latest book, Sicilian Splendors, Discovering the Secret Places That Speak to the Heart. I'm going to be reading a section of a story I like a lot from the afterword. It was my last few days in Sicily, and I had this adventure that sort of tells about the Sicilian people and how they treat their guests. I asked Anna Maria where I could purchase shoelaces. Not here, she said. There is no store. You will have to go to Santo Stefano di Camastra. It's just 9 kilometers to the north. I groaned. I simply wanted to hang out on beaches along the sea and unwind a bit before beginning the long process of heading home in 3 days. But my shoelace had snapped, so off to Santo Stefano I went. It was a quick drive and a beautiful one along that Tyrrhenian coastline with patches of Sicilian pines whipped into all kinds of shapes by decades of sea winds. Santo Stefano is larger, with about 5,000 residents. Its main street is lined with shop after shop displaying ceramics. In fact, the sign at the town's entrance proclaims it as the Città della Ceramici. I did not know this, that Santo Stefano had ceramics tradition like Caltagirone in Sicily's center or Sciacca along the southern coast near Agrigento. I eventually found a lone parking stop and went into a couple of shops to see where I could find shoelaces. After 3 or 4 tries, someone directed me to a children's clothing store just across the street and next to an appealing looking bar where I might find my second espresso of the day. I went, entering the shop with a tinkling bell over the door. A man came out from the back room. He reached under the counter and pulled out a box with a jumble of shoelaces. One was the right color and looked long enough. Success. I would fix my shoe problem and head back to Castel di Tusa for a day of looking out at the sea and visualizing the centuries' worth of seafaring traffic that had sailed past here. I would have a lot to dream about. It was along this coast that the Norman king Roger II was riding in a storm-tossed ship that was forced to land on the beach at Cefalù, just along the coast a few miles west of Castel di Tusa. In his prayers, the legend goes, he promised that if he survived the storm at sea, he would build a cathedral at the spot where he found refuge. Thus, Cefalù has one of Sicily's most glorious cathedrals, with stunning mosaics that are on a par with the cathedral at Monreale, which interestingly enough was built at the behest of Roger II's grandson, King William II, William the Good. But I digress. I took the shoelaces next door to the bar, ordered my coffee, and sat at a tiny table perched along the sidewalk. There was a happy, laughing group of folks a few feet away, taking their morning break. I unlaced my shoe and bent over, started threading the new lace when suddenly I noticed blood dripping from my shoe and onto the sidewalk. I grabbed my nose and realized I was in the middle of a major nosebleed. I rarely have them, and they are usually quite small. This one wasn't. All I had was a slim napkin, which I pressed against the offending nostril, but it was quickly saturated. A couple of women from the other table noticed. They jumped up and with napkins in their hands gathered around me, pressing the paper against my nose. One ran inside to get ice. A man commanded me to hold my head down. Another said I should sit upright and tilt my head back. I fumbled with more napkins. Someone kept pressing into my hand, but the blood kept flowing. My shirt and pants were turning scarlet. Then, into the view, arrived an older woman, who I found out later was just passing by. She took charge. She had me tilt my head back and pressed a new supply of napkins hard against the nostril. She ordered a young woman to run across the street to the pharmacia to get a tampone. I heard tampon and figured, what the heck, one of those should do the trick. It seemed like just a few seconds and the young woman was back with a box of small squares of gauze. that I later found out was designed to stop hemo, and they were called tamponi and were different from what I had first imagined. This wonderful woman who took charge was pulling on a latex glove. Where she got it, I don't know. And then she tightly rolled that cotton swab. The next thing I knew, she was jamming it hard into my right nostril. That did it. The flow was halted. Meanwhile, someone else was pressing pieces of ice wrapped in a bar towel against my nose. I noticed that two of the women from the next table stood on either side of me, their comforting arms around my shoulders. Another young woman had wet napkins and was wiping blood from my mustache and beard. The crowd around me started to break up. The folks from the next table went back to it. I looked around. The woman who had taken charge was gone. She had swooped in, rescued me, and with her job done, disappeared. I got up and walked over to the other table. I thanked them profusely. One woman said, "Signore, questa è la Sicilia. A ti amo. Dite alla gente che la Sicilia non è la mafia." Sir, this is Sicily. We help. Tell people that Sicily is not the mafia. I told him that I knew this, and that tourists who stereotype the island with misguided fascination about the mafia bother me. Why the mafia came up, I have no idea, but these were people who obviously were sensitive about an outsider's view of their island. I offered to buy them all espressi. Politely, they declined. Their break was over. Work beckoned. I set up my table to finish installing the shoelace. The barman came out, smiled, and shook his head at the sight of the tampone sticking out of my nose. He gathered up all the bloody napkins, hauled them inside, and returned with a gelato cone. "On the house," he said in English. I walked over to the pharmacia and asked the pharmacist for a box of tampone. I now carry one of them in my wallet, and the box is stashed in the cupboard, just in case. The next morning, I was sitting at an outside table at the pastry shop in Castel di Tusa. I looked up. A woman was striding toward me. It was the angel who had saved me the day before. "How are you doing? How is your nose?" "It is fine," I said. "No more problems." I reached into my shirt pocket and pulled out a paper-wrapped tampone. "It is my new friend, NuovoAmico," I said, pointing to it. She laughed. I thanked her, and then she turned and started to walk away. "Wait," I said, doing my best with my limited Italian. "What is your name?" She didn't stop or look back. "Rita!" she shouted as she opened the door to her car. "Like Rita Hayworth!" And once again she was gone.